Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello and welcome to episode 49 of Mythos Busters, where tonight I surprised Nick with my intro, and it's Nick. Hi, Nick.
Hi. I'm not that surprised.
Oh well, okay.
Right.
It was a worthy effort.
Okay.
So it's just the two of us for you guys tonight. So far, we know we're not going to have Scott. Scott has some people over, so he's not going to be joining us tonight. Ian should be flying in on the back of a Shantak, or a Shantak. What are the big? How do you pronounce that? The big winged beasts. I should know this.
From Arkham. I was like, what are you talking about? I don't have Red Dead yet.
Dude, if they had Shantaks in Red Dead, it would be a whole different game.
I've been calling him Shantaks, but that's because I'm from Minnesota, so I guess I'm not sure.
All right.
But night gaunts are normally what we would fly in on, isn't it?
Well, it depends on if you had gained the whistles, I suppose. But to that end, we'll catch him when he comes in. So we've got a fun show for you guys tonight. We're going to do a little bit of catch-up. We've got some fun news. Of course, going to cover some stuff in the community. And tonight, our main topic is going to be to talk about our favorite and least favorite, straying away from the words good and bad, scenarios in this game, and why we like and not so much like them. And then, of course, we'll close it out with Tentacle Time. So, let's go first with a little bit of check-in. Nick, what have you been playing lately?
I've actually been playing more Arkham Horror 3rd Edition than Arkham Horror the card game. I still haven't played Shattered Aeons. It's sleeved, it's ready to go. The problem is that, like, my wife and I had a solo Ursula campaign going, and then I got the Yithian off of City of Archives, so now Ursula's a Yithian. And I'm ready to play Shattered Aeons, but I have that deck dismantled because my wife and I were playing our 2-player game, and we're only on Doom of Etzli. So I didn't really want to dismantle both of those decks. Anyway, so we've been playing more Arkham Horror 3rd Edition, the board game, which is a lot of fun. Like, I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know that you really enjoyed it too. But we've gotten in 4 different games at this point. We finally beat Azathoth, the approach to Azathoth. Mm-hmm. That was really fun.
I've yet to put up a W in Arkham 3rd, so...
Oh, sure. Yeah, we got that one. We failed twice, and then we got a win on that, and we played Cthulhu once, and we were handling it pretty well, but then just monsters started coming in. And the thing with Arkham 3rd, and kind of Arkham Horror, the board game in general, is that I've learned that it doesn't do a quick turn on you. It's more like if you'll have a turn where you fail a test you really needed to succeed, and that's enough to slow you down. And then the next turn, like, the importance to succeed that test is doubled. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I had 4 turns in a row where I could not deal with the enemies on me, and she had 4 turns in a row where she couldn't deal with the scenario-specific tests that she needed to advance our codex cards. And so it just spiraled out of control from there. But no, really good. I think Cthulhu is more fun than Azathoth, and that might just be because Azathoth is the vanilla, like, play this one first sort of ancient.
Yeah, he's always the tutorial old one.
Mm-hmm. But
which is his subtitle now in all Arkham Files games.
Right. But Cthulhu is also incredibly punishing because
what's Cthulhu's shtick? What's he do?
So he has all the Deep One enemies, as you'd imagine, and all of the scenario cards and all of the events and everything are all related to the ocean and the stars and blah blah blah. But yeah, BD Flory brings it up in our chat, and he's very right about this. Is that Cthulhu's Reckoning ability is each investigator takes horror equal to the amount of doom on their territory. So if you moved to like a 3 doom space and you failed your ward test and then Reckoning comes up, so Arkham Horror doesn't turn quickly too often, but with Cthulhu it definitely has the potential to. So you want to make sure you're hitting your ward tests the same turn you enter those those locations and stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of fun.
Surprise tentacle time.
Exactly.
I have honestly not been able to play as much Arkham as I wanted to. I took I just talked about it. My Wendy and Zoe campaign ended at Depths of Yoth. I had a real rough run, and sadly they sank to those depths. So then, on my table, I have right now, I'm actually going to finish it after we wrap recording. I'm midway through my first real playthrough of Shattered Aeons with Finn and Silas, who have thus far been my most successful campaign through TFA.
Sure.
They've been amazing, and it's a great campaign. I'm really excited to see where this goes. So far, I'm really liking this scenario. So we'll see how it ends up being. As far as like the campaign closers are always ones that kind of ideally stick with you a bit, right?
Ideally, yeah. I still think that, oh god, what's the Dunwich one now? I can't remember the name of it.
Lost in Time and Space?
Well, I should have known that. I still think that Lost in Time and Space felt more like a bonus level than the actual capstone to the campaign, simply because, I don't know why, I guess I'm not sure. Like, it has really cool mechanics, and it has a really strong identity, but I don't know, like, I guess because the objective is literally just get to here, now get to here, now get to here. You know what I mean? Like, there really isn't much else going on other than a race to the next location.
Interesting. Yeah, I actually thought that one hit for me because it was so... You really felt like you were lost in time and space, and it was just like this really nebulous traversal toward this goal, and you didn't know how you were going to get there, and yeah, I don't know.
Well, I guess I'm comparing that to Dim Carcosa, which which to me, Dim Carcosa felt very much more like this is the culmination of everything that happened in the campaign. You know what I mean? Like, Dim Carcosa really called on...
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
As far as like pulling together narrative threads.
Yes.
Like, so Lost in Time and Space was the dingleberry that followed the turd that... No, I'm not actually trying to trash Dunwich at this point. Metaphor.exe has stopped. Execute. Okay. So I'll be really interested to see how that goes. And I've also been playing a fair amount of standalone lately.
The true Arkham horror.
Well, it depends on who you talk to, but there is some magic to be found in standalone. Man,
exactly.
It's been a while since I played Akachi, but I built a standalone Akachi with level 5 Shriveling and the new Shards spell. Oh god, that card's good in Akachi.
Yes.
And with those standalone bags actually tend to have a lot of zeros, so I don't know if you guys have not seen this card yet, but basically it comes in, seals a 0. That 0 can be used as a charge, and then if you ever pull a 0 from the Chaos bag while doing a test on that spell, you can seal it as well for an extra charge and an extra damage bonus in the moment. So it was just, she's decked out with her grotesque statues, and yeah, ooh, man. I had one test where I pulled a 0 and an Elder Sign. And I was like, what do I do?
Akachi, like, it's funny because I'm not that much of a Mystic player, but the Mystics that I like are the ones that are probably considered the quote-unquote boring Mystics, because I really do like Jim, and he's a lot less boring now. Like, he's gotten a lot of really interesting tools that really require you to make some good timing decisions. But in our 2-player game, my wife and I'm playing Akachi, and I'm finding that, like, when I built the deck for her, I'm like, what do I even do? Just throw spells in and that's it? Like, you don't get tricky
is the
with
answer
it.
To that question.
Yeah, and so it felt really weird, but then I sat down and played her in Untamed Wilds, and I was like, this is actually a lot of fun. Like, she's so straightforward, and all of her abilities are really good. Like, every spell comes in with an extra charge, and her Elder Sign is useful. It's not, like, amazing like Skids is, but it's really useful. Yeah, it's just, she just works.
She's
you know
the
what
Energizer
I mean?
Bunny of the Mystics.
Exactly.
She goes farther on the same amount of resources that anyone else can.
And I think that's just awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, Akachi's she's real fun.
Mhm.
I'm excited. Okay, so complete tangent, but we'll come back. I'm actually really excited to kind of take on solo again. I feel like it's been a while since I've given true solo a fair shake.
Sure.
And of course, the reason I end up hating true solo when I go and do these tests is because I often pick the investigators that are just like, yeah, maybe don't play them true solo if you're looking for an even experience. So
Play true solo, Norman.
No, I'll be taking Silas true solo through Forgotten Age. And Silas, I don't think
Forgotten
is that
Age,
sketch.
really?
Yeah, Forgotten Age. I don't think Silas is that sketch as far as like how good he is. I know him well enough, and he's got like you can pack that deck with enough intellect icons, and with his ability to pull him back when you overkill. Like it just, I have faith. So I'll report back next time on how my Silas campaign is going.
Well, and Survivor has the most, and I don't know if you would build a Silas deck. Maybe True Solo you'd build it like this, but Survivor has the most testless clue acquisition, I think. I think
that's accurate.
Yeah, it just requires you to spend an action or to have a certain card in hand or whatever. So I think Solo Survivor is generally, quote unquote, generally a pretty good idea for True Solo.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Yeah.
I have to fight my kind of like thematic nature, because every time I've taken Silas through any Forgotten Age scenarios, I always go like, yeah, Silas would make friends with the Edsley. Like that's his jam. So he always gets like the bow, and he'll take Ichtaka, and like Yaudle is his first upgrade. So I gotta kind of calm down and actually play the game instead of make the story decisions, because True Solo is a little less forgiving to those, I would say.
See, and even in multiplayer, I still make the decisions based on the mechanical deck that I'm playing, and not based off of the only decisions that I make based off of story that I can think of off the top of my head in Forgotten Age is when you have to choose to either send the relic to the museum or give it to Harlan. Mm-hmm. And I think I always give it to Harlan just because, like we talked about, we didn't trust Alejandro at the beginning. Before we knew what was going on, we didn't trust him. So that's the only one that I'm still like, I haven't seen what this does, but I'm still giving it to Harlan. So
I know what it does. It's
I've since played.
It's become clear to me now in the final scenario. It's interesting.
Oh, I see. Okay, I would say I've played Threads of Fate enough to where I've seen all of the different acts.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, if there's repercussions in Shattered Aeons, that's even better.
All right, so we'll check in for further. Do you have okay? So let me ask another tangential question, just because we're being gabby right now. Do you, like me, do you have like a queue of campaigns you want to start where like I'm halfway through the Silas campaign and I'm already thinking about like, okay, next I'm gonna take like solo Agnes through this. Like, do you do that, or do you just like finish a campaign and then figure out what you're doing?
I normally just kind of run one campaign at a time. Usually what it is I decide I want to play this investigator, or I want to play this build of a deck. And then I will decide either a scenario to try it standalone. And I used to not start new campaigns that often, simply because it's like I got to go through every scenario, and I got to, I might not get the experience I want to get the tools I want to play with, which is why I love standalone, because you get all your tools right away. Mm-hmm. But after Iron Man, I actually started, I think, 5 different true solo campaigns. And finished 3 of them. Finished as in the investigators got defeated, and I decided I didn't want to replace them.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so...
Forgotten Age?
Forgotten Age, yeah. And I haven't really done that since, simply because I haven't had time to play it. Like I said, the Arkham I played has been the board game, and other than that, there's another gaming project that's been taking up a lot of time in the last week that I'll talk about during Tentacle Time. Yeah, so I haven't played as much of the card game in the last 2 or 3 weeks as I would have liked. So,
okay, so then I'll press you. If you had to choose right now, say after the podcast, we're going to pick up a campaign. What are you playing? Like what's in the back of your mind of I want to try that?
I think I want to do Solo Wendy. in something. I don't know where, but I want to try Solo Wendy in something, which is funny because there are still investigators I straight up have not played. I haven't played Norman. I haven't played Silas. I haven't played...
Not owning them helps.
No, I own them. I have both of them.
You were able to get both of those? Okay, sweet.
Yeah, the ones I don't have are Roland, surprisingly.
Roland and Carolyn.
And Carolyn. And I played...
Guardians.
Yeah, and I played Carolyn because you loaned me her. And
the universe mocks you.
Right? Oh, I know. It's cosmic irony.
Screw you. There's not even a mystic. The universe mocks me.
No, but you... Oh, you don't have Marie. That's right.
Yeah, bastard. You took that.
I didn't take it. Casey gave it to me. It's not my fault Casey doesn't like you. Anyway. No, I'm kidding. No, so I think I would do Solo Wendy. I just don't know in what. Which is, like I said, it's funny because I played Wendy before, but I really haven't given her a fair shake since... The Gathering, like literally since the game released. So I really want to try her out with all the tools now.
Yeah, I was honestly in about the same boat. I hadn't seriously played a full campaign with Wendy since the core. Mm-hmm. And when I started up my Zoe Wendy campaign, like, dude, she is just so good.
Yeah.
Like, even in like solo, she'll be great. In 2-player, still fantastic. Like, you can build her to be really dodge tanky with some spank. In the rogue department, you can build her just like go crazy on clues, to the extent that a non-seeker can go crazy on clues, which is actually pretty decent nowadays if you're red and green.
She's
very, very good.
Yeah, there's so many tools now. Even like you think that actually dealing with enemies is kind of Wendy's downfall. You know what I mean? Like she can dodge for days, but you'll get those scenarios where evading isn't going to help you all the time because you're eating an action, you're spending a third of your turn to evade the enemy, and then, you're probably going to have to deal with that enemy, especially in Forgotten Age, you're going to have to deal with that enemy eventually anyway.
And we live in a post-bow world.
Not only the bow, but there's so many other tools that are level 0 or maybe level 1 that don't require combat to defeat enemies. There's rogue tools, there's like there's Hatchet Man that really helps you out. There's
Hatchet Man with sneak attack, like when Ian said that, I'm like, oh damn, that's bomb.
Yeah, and Venericio, I'm sorry, I'm not probably saying your name wrong, but in chat he says Waylay, and I was just thinking the same thing. Waylay is the fact that Wendy's on the art is telling enough. Like that's a Wendy card. So
is it over? It's so disturbing and awesome at the same time. Yeah, she's quite good. I would implore anyone who has not tried Wendy in a while to do so because she's gotten some really good tools. Chief among them, Winging It. Some of the rock stars. Winging It is just an amazing card anyway.
Yes. That's one of those ones that like every Dunwich investigator or most Dunwich investigators are going to take Winging It because it's so good.
Mm-hmm. And it's so funny how like you think like, oh, flip side of the coin, improvised weapon is the same card just for monsters, but it's just so not good. So I like that the kind of action efficiency dimensions between dealing with monsters versus dealing with clue acquisition just kind of plays out differently. I love. I don't know if that was even intended or if it just happens by organic magic, but here we are.
Well, we already had a situation almost exactly like that between Look What I Found and Dumb Luck, and Look What I Found gets played all the time, and because grabbing 2 clues on a failure is huge, but Dumb Luck.
Or even Oops, if we want to extend the...
Or even Oops. I was going to say Dumb Luck gets used occasionally. Oops never gets used. Never.
I included it once in a Zoe deck just to see what would happen, and it's like, well, no, I'm hitting all my fight tests. If
everybody put it in, you don't put it in Zoe.
It was a tank Zoe, so I'm like, all right, well, if there's anyone who's going to have like 6 enemies engaged with you, and like, okay, now I'll hit you instead, like, it's going to be Zoe. But yeah, it never ended up getting played. It was an overpower sans the draw every time. So, play overpower, kids.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on from there, we got a little bit of Patreon... Patron? A little bit of Patreon... I do this every damn time. A little bit of patron business to... There we go, to clear up. So thanks, as always, to our board of directors, Chris, Ian, and newly appointed to the board of directors? Yeah. Alex. Welcome, Alex. I hope you find your adjustable chair to be as plush as you hoped.
Oh, they're not actually on a board? I thought they're just sitting on a 2x4.
Yeah, we went different ways with that one. Dear listener, it's up to you which one you liked more. And of course, our random shout out this week is going to this week. Sorry, I was reading and talking at the same time, which is just a fool's errand.
Is that your way of saying like, oh no, just go? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
We had one night where I had like 3 of those in quick succession. It was pretty amazing. So our random patron this week is going to be Black Jimmy James Phillips, who, of course, has written for the Mythos Busters blog before. Mm-hmm. And thank you, James, for being a patron, and thank you for your contributions to the community. We very much enjoy you. We've got a couple job titles that HR has officially put the stamp on this week. Nick, why don't you read the first one?
Sure. So our first job title goes to Alan Dennison. He is the executive Shantak handler. I see why Shantak was at the forefront of your mind.
Oh, damn, it was in my mind. I foreshadowed the joke without realizing it. Go me.
So thank you very much, Alan.
And Matthew Hargrove Farabee has been appointed the director of chit fondling. So we know how important a position that is. So we're very grateful that Matthew will be accepting that position.
Mm-hmm. Sean was covering the responsibilities of that position, and I think he's a little sad to relinquish those responsibilities. But I'm glad that he's going to stop making those weird groaning sounds now. So
I may have, like in a panic, stuffed a few chits into my underwear, and I'm not quite sure what to do about it now. It's kind of embarrassing. So bear with me a second here, guys. So the last thing we want to do related to Patreon is, like I said on the last episode, we have a set of burger tokens to give away. I am still totally digging my burger tokens. I've actually appropriated them from Arkham to be my like standby tokens for Keyforge because they are that damn adaptable. So our random patron this week who wins a free set of burger tokens is, drumroll please.
There
it is. I like it. Good tongue trills. Good. That's good diaphragm control. I appreciate that. James Huff.
Yay.
So congratulations, James. These burger tokens are yours. We'll get in contact with you via Patreon. You'll have to let us know if you're not in the U.S. and can't easily get a hold of pennies, because it's possible that I could get a hold of a roll of pennies to send these with you. But if not, then we'll just send you the tokens. And then I think the last piece... Yeah, okay, so then the last piece we want to prop is today is Blackest Friday. So this is a new thing that the Twisted Tentacle Inn has put on. So basically, innkeeper Vezoden has given various community members and community contributors different prizes to give away, and we've all kind of chosen our various ways that we want to give them away. So keeping in with the topic of the times, we're doing a Keyforge deck name contest with a spin. So go out to our Facebook. There's a post there about this contest. Basically what you want to do is you want to go give us an Arkham deck name, but do it in the style of a Keyforge deck. Nick, give us your best one on the spot.
Louis C. Arkham, the purveyor of mysterious blackness.
I like it. So
I still think the middle initial is the dumbest thing in that whole process.
Dude, I got a deck name that has a middle initial and like there's a name for it. It's like, Junior, the third, the fourth. There's a name. There's a name. No, it's not even Junior. It's my deck name is Dinah E. Flaxus the 8th.
Yes, yeah, that's good. I would love if it was Junior instead, though, because you know that it would probably say the second. Like, they probably had the Roman numeral 2 in their matrix, but they probably don't have Junior, and I really want there to be a Junior now.
No, I do too. Now I want there to be a senior for some reason as well. Just throw that in there.
Charles Kevin Senior Esquire.
So anyway, go ahead and throw your deck name out there. On December 16th, We'll announce the winner. We'll go out and pick one of the deck names that was submitted, and you will get a full Invocation 2018 set. So that's the playmat, the scenario, the dividers. I think there's one more thing that I'm missing. Deck box? Is there a deck box? Or was that just Arkham Knights?
Hang on, let me pull up the thing here. Playmat, promo cards, scenario,
Promos.
dividers. I know we got the deck box at Arkham Knights. I guess I'm not sure if that's a...
I think the promos is what I was missing. So yeah, it's the lucky level 0 and 2 full bleed art promos. So those are really pretty, and I'm super excited to get a full playset of both of those now. But yeah, so that Invocation kit will be yours. So if you happen to want an extra, or were not able to make it out to an Invocation, or couldn't find one in your area, this is how you do it. Go out to that contest, post your deck list, and hopefully win. Good luck, everyone. Nick, what's going on in the community? What do we want to prop this week?
So I don't know. I guess this is one that I'm not sure if we've propped earlier on. Like in an early episode. I don't think we have.
I don't think so either.
Okay, but I did find an Etsy shop that I'm sure most of our avid listeners are familiar with, but it's called Dracula's Tokens. Handcrafted tokens for a lot of different LCGs, Arkham Horror included. The link that I posted in our live chat brings you right to the Arkham Horror selection. There's a lot of he has the wood tokens that have the laser engraved art and stuff on them. The location connector arrows with footprints are really cool. The laser engraved wood chaos tokens are awesome. But then he also has some other stuff like the crates to replace your crate, cardboard tokens. He has actual 3-dimensional crates that I think these were the ones that either Kenji or Josh had with them at Gen Con last year, and I used them during the Labyrinths of Lunacy playthrough, and they were really cool. Like, I really like them. But even if you're looking for stuff for other games like Legend of the Five Rings or Keyforge, he has custom Keyforge tokens on there now too, so there's a lot of options on there. So check out that Etsy shop if you like to pimp your game.
As we know, all of you do.
You should, if you don't.
No, that's actually patently untrue. I've shown up to Invocation events and watched people pull out their stock cardboard tokens that are just beat to hell.
I am one of those players. The one thing I haven't pimped yet are tokens. So I do want to at some point. I just haven't bit the bullet to actually do it. So,
dude, I've got like 4 separate upgrades. Let's just talk about which one I'm least loath to get rid of.
I just want you to throw them all into a big bowl and just give me a handful.
Here's this potpourri of mismatched chits. Take it.
There'll be some
man, that
Lord
would
of the
drive
Rings
me
ones
nuts.
and some Star Wars Death Stars in there. And
that would absolutely drive me nuts, dude. I am the guy who, when I played Lord of the Rings and I had like heroes of different spheres, I would bother to put like different colored resource tokens based on what sphere they like. I'm that guy. So the idea of trying to play a game with just a Frankenstein set of tokens.
You know how Essex, the die company, the RPG dice company, you know how they have a pound of dice? So the idea of like an FFG pound of tokens doesn't really appeal to you?
I don't know. Now it does.
I know. I kind of wish that was a thing.
I mean, if I could buy it by the pound, sure, why not?
Just tokens from all different games, just a random assortment. Oh, that'd be amazing.
Make it happen, FFG. All right, cool. So we've got some news this week. Yeah. Unlike usual, where the news pops right after we record, this week we actually got it to pop 2 or 3 days, and
yeah.
The first one we're going to cover here, was this announced today? It sure was. Look at that. So the second Mythos pack of the is the cycle called the Circle Undone?
Yes.
Okay, so the second Mythos pack of the Circle Undone cycle has been announced. It's called the Wages of Sin. I know Ian and Scott might like to go into the actual encounter cards a little bit more in depth. Nick and I are both like, hey, let's save it till we actually open it. So TLDR, we're going into a haunted house. It's an Arkham haunted house. There appear to be ghosts and other hauntings. There's a picture of a hanged man. It looks pretty grim. Let's go with that. But on to the player card spoilers. There were some really fun ones here. So, Nick, as both Carolyn, Leo, and Roland are investigators that you tend to enjoy, I see that it's only right that you read Alice.
Alice Luxley, the Fearless Flatfoot. She is a Guardian ally. She is level 0, has a resource cost of 4, asset, obviously, 1 intellect icon. She has the traits Ally, Detective, and Police. And her game text reads, you get +1 intellect. I'm already on board. That's not part of the game text. And then the rest of her ability is reaction. After you discover a clue, exhaust Alice Luxley. Deal 1 damage to an enemy at your location. She takes up the ally slot, and she has 2 health and 2 sanity. And I just want to say this before you steal the thunder, or steal the wind from my sails, that she is a new auto-include in Roland for me. Especially in scenarios with cultists.
Yep, so I definitely see that. So okay. I'm still kind of processing her ability.
Okay.
I was quite busy today at work, and I didn't have quite the... I wanted to jump into Discord and discuss it with everyone else, so I'm kind of ignorant of that discussion. So, Roland has to destroy an enemy to get a clue. And then when you get a clue, you get to deal damage to the enemy.
To an enemy.
An enemy. Is that a little marginal? I mean, maybe not in multiplayer for sure, but little bit more sketch in solo, right?
I mean... Well, it's all dependent on the scenario. Generally, yeah. I mean, okay. Generally speaking, there's going to be fewer opportunities to pair her ability with Roland's ability in true solo. But there are definitely scenarios where it totally, it works. Again, anything that uses cultists, when you have those 1 health enemies, you don't have to be engaged with the enemy. So even any aloof enemies, if you got whippoorwills following you around, and then you kill a thrall, or whatever, you get a clue, you exhaust her, kill a whippoorwill, get another clue. You know what I mean? That's
Wait, hang on. Doesn't Roland only trigger once per round?
No, I don't think so.
There's no limit on his clue gathering?
I'm going to preface this. It's been a long time since I played Roland. I would imagine that I would have his card memorized, but I don't. So you're right. Limit once per round.
But still, I mean, the point still stands. It's still good, even if you can't proc it twice. But okay, so the other thing that kind of makes me go, huh? She takes a little bit of finesse to play with. Is that okay? You discover a clue. For a lot of people, that means you investigated somehow.
Well,
okay. We'll get to the butt in a second.
It's a big butt.
It is an enormous butt. But. For just kind of an average effect, if you don't have a special trick, and there are many special tricks which we'll get to, but if you don't have a special trick, you have to investigate first and then want to deal damage to an enemy, which, in multiplayer could happen more often. In slower player counts, chances are if you're investigating and you want to deal damage to an enemy, the enemy is already upon you. You have to take an attack of opportunity if you hope to trigger her. Might not always be a great proposition. But... True. I'll let you lay down the butt.
Well, again, like we were talking about, and it's brought up in our chat already here, but there's so many good cards. There's so many cards that exist now that cheat clues off of locations and into your control. Scene of the Crime is the first one that comes to mind. Obviously. Yeah, because it's the same character in the art, as has been pointed out by Motux.
Oh, is it really? Shit.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I haven't closely looked at who's in Scene of the Crime.
Well, I didn't know until this card came out. Now I know who it is. So Scene of the Crime is one of them. Grab 2 clues, don't get the attack of opportunity, and then get the free damage off of her. But not only that, in later scenarios, if you're running like a charisma build, you could have both Alice Luxley and Iron Man Carcosa MVP Guard Dog in play. And if you take that attack of opportunity, Guard Dog hits back. And then you discover the clue from your investigate action, and then she hits again, so you could be doubling up your damage. There's so much play here with just this one simple ability that's essentially an inverse of Roland's ability, almost an inverse, that I get so excited at the different ways that you can trigger this and the different ways that you can play around Alice Luxley, or that she's going to really bring that, the action compression guardian that much more in the forefront. So I'm excited.
And I think we might have glossed over one of the most important parts really quickly, is that this is a static intellect boost in blue.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
a thing to talk about. Do any other boosts even exist? Static ones. Like, I know you got Keen Eye where you can spend.
In blue specifically, the only other one I can think of is Police Badge with Will.
Oh, sorry, I meant static boost to intellect specifically.
Oh, to intellect. It's just Milan.
Yeah, well, for Roland.
And
Roland can take Working a Hunch, too, and proc this again. Yeah, this is definitely this is a solid little card.
Adds play to Working a Hunch, which honestly I don't play anymore.
But now you might.
But now I might. I love Alice. Alice, I want to keep saying Alex. I love Alice Luxley. I think she's amazing.
Well, I feel like it's going to be hard for you to keep that a secret.
Oh my god.
Are we going to do the AV thing? I want to do the AV thing. We already did it.
I mean, I technically can't stop you.
This is true. So the next spoiled card we have is another ally, this time a Seeker ally, Mr. Rook, dealer in secrets. He is level 0, 3 cost, willpower icon, ally traded. He uses 3 secrets. Free action, or fast action, whatever we decided that's called. Exhaust Mr. Rook and spend 1 secret. Search the top 3, 6, or 9 cards of your deck for any card and draw it. If at least one weakness is among the searched cards, you draw one of them as well. Shuffle your deck. He has 2 health, 2 sanity, takes up an ally slot. Are you sure you want to know? There's no going back.
So I pulled a Sean when I was reading this card because I read it. Well, it was a very brief Sean, but let me. I was reading it, and it was like search the top. It was search the top 3, 6, or 9 cards of your deck for any card and draw it. And I was like, why would you ever not choose 9? And then literally after I completed that thought, then I finished reading the card, and I was like, oh, that's why.
Yeah. So,
but still, do you ever not choose 9?
I think unless you're how worried about your weaknesses you are. Like, if your weaknesses are just kind of normal, like, hey, they're not going to be fun when I draw them, but it's not going to wreck me, you probably just go for it.
So, I think Mr. Rook fits really nicely in Jim, because I've always felt that Jim's signature weakness is one of the more palatable of all the weaknesses. And, depending on what your random basic weakness is, but the fact that you have another dig card, it's a dig card that can soak damage and that you can use multiple times. So I would even go so far as to say Mr. Rook might kick out No Stone Unturned in your average Jim build.
Yep. Ally slot, though, that's the sticking part for me, is that this is a really cool effect, and it's at a decent cost.
Mm-hmm.
But it's in, like, the hardest slot. Like, yellow has access to Milan, so you have to kind of...
Oh, yeah. Most Seekers probably wouldn't run this.
Well...
Not at level 0.
They should still consider it, because Milan's a crutch.
Is he though?
Well, that's the discussion for another time.
Well, there's only 2 of us. We got time. How do you mean crutch? Like, do you mean like people rely on him too much?
Well, I think it's just if you're kind of going for effectiveness, it's just very, very hard to talk yourself out of going like, oh, I always go Milan unless I have a very good reason not to, which is a valid way of thinking, and you will probably win a lot of games because of it. But I don't know. I think if you're going the other way, if you're able to get some other resource engine going that's probably not as good as Milan, nothing's ever going to be good as Milan, but if it's serviceable, and instead what you're looking for is draw, particularly selective draw for combo pieces, like, this is a good ally.
Yes, I think Dan in chat hit what I perceive to be Milan's true strength on the head. It's not like the resource is the icing on the cake, but the real meat, I don't know what kind of cake we're baking, but the real meat of Milan is the intellect boost. It's an iced meat cake, I guess. But that static intellect boost is what really hammers him home. You know what I mean? Like, Seekers want high intellect for pretty much everything they do, for the most part, and he just makes what you're already good at even better, and then he rewards you for doing what you're gonna do anyway. So I think... I don't want to go back to it, but Scott threw up such an argument for Unearth the Ancients. Like, if that actually becomes a useful card and we have some other static intellect boost, then I could see Milan not being run.
See, I think we're getting to the point, and I love that. I love that we're sideways having this discussion now. I think we're getting to the point in the card pool where there are enough options for various effects that you can really start to break out of what were kind of the molds of decks.
Oh, sure.
From prior days. And you always could if you were adventurous, but I feel like now you can do it without being too risky. Like, if you build a Seeker deck that your thought is, I'm not going to take Milan, we're going to go a different way with it.
Right.
So you use something like Unearth the Ancients for your resource acceleration to get down your big... your big assets.
Which...
Then you're going to go more icons and draw in your deck, because then at that point that's what's more valuable to you, kind of as a de facto resource if you're kind of building around that. And in that deck, Mr. Rook is a solid card.
Sure. Again, you're still losing out on that passive intellect boost, which
always,
which is huge. Like,
I think that's
the true strength in Milan, personally. But
really? Yeah.
I think the resources,
it's definitely a
again,
great strength.
Yeah, they're the icing on the cake. They're the reward. You know what I mean? But most of the time, I mean, let me ask you this, because you just ran Daisy through Carcosa Iron Man with us, and you had Milan in the deck. Did you?
Guilty.
Right. Did you include Milan? When you included Milan, did you include him because he gives you +1 intellect, and you were our Kluver, or because of the resource ramp? Like, which was your primary reason?
If I had to nail a primary reason, it would actually be because of the resource ramp, because I was running Daisy with higher ed and Stone, so the whole idea was to just boost as high as you can go. But that said, the intellect boost helps toward that anyway, so it's just kind of a flat yes, I included it for both.
Sure. I guess I'm kind of arguing, like, just... It's a useless argument, because really they're both super good.
Well,
so...
that's exactly it, is that he helps you do a thing and then rewards you for doing that thing.
Yeah.
In a quite a valuable way for the faction he sits in, so anyway.
Moving on from a card that has been out since the start of the game.
I like Mr. Rook, though. So, again,
yes,
just kind of rounding it back here. In a world where Seeker has some other way to shore up their resources and they can justify going, okay, this deck will work if I don't run Milan in it. Instead, I need to pull some really specific combo pieces out to make sure this deck functions. And Mr. Rook's like, are you sure? There's no going back.
I still think that Mr. Rook's primary place, at least for the time being, is going to be in non-Seeker investigators. And the reason why I say that is because chances are, at this point in the game, most Seekers are going to prefer to have Milan out, like we just talked about. Sure. And Mr. Rook, his ability is beneficial across the board, whereas Milan is beneficial across the board, but really good with high intellect. You know what I mean? Like, really good if you're doubling down on something you're already good at. Whereas Mr. Rook is just like, you need stuff to work, I'm going to let you look for stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's why my first thought
and
was
you get
Jim.
To decide how daring you want to be.
Exactly. So, yeah.
And I feel like it'd be interesting to take him in a level 0 deck, and then you draw Overzealous. And then be like, okay, well, maybe he's not as good in this specific campaign because that happened, so I upgrade him out or something like that. Anyway,
sure. Again, yeah, I'm really excited to run Rook in a gym deck because I think that would be great.
Yeah, I think. I mean, there's no test involved. He doesn't ask anything of you aside from playing him. I think you're right. I think he's a solid. I think you might look at him in almost every Dunwich investigator.
Oh yeah.
I shall have to explore this. Well, in 6 months when it comes out.
Right.
I don't proxy. I'm too lazy. All right, so moving on to the last card then, Nick, as a fellow aspiring actor, I feel only appropriate that you should read Henry.
Aspiring? I've actually acted. I guess I'm not professional.
You have acted.
So.
Well, yeah, see, that was the implication. Not that
Gotcha.
you're not... Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I love you.
Thanks. Love you too. Henry Wan.
I'm gonna go with Juan.
Juan. Henry Wan. Aspiring actor. He is a rogue ally. 3 resource cost. Level 0. Single agility icon. He has the ally and criminal traits. And his game text reads, Action. Exhaust Henry Wan. 1 at a time. Reveal random tokens from the Chaos Bag until you choose to stop. Or until you reveal a Skull Cultist Tablet Elder Thing or Tentacle symbol. And then there's 2 bullet points. If you choose to stop, for each token revealed via this effect, you may either draw a card or gain 1 resource. And the other bullet point is, if you revealed a Skull Cultist Tablet Elder Thing or Tentacle symbol, do nothing. It is 1 health, 2 sanity, and takes the ally slot. This one I'm less... I love what he's doing, and I love the interplay between like him and Mr. Rook, this idea that you are tempting fate and you're deciding how far you want to push your luck. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know where this guy's home is. You know what I mean? Like Mr. Rook, I knew immediately where he would fit nicely. Henry, I can't place him.
He's interesting. Okay, so a couple things I want to say is he's scenario dependent and team dependent. Because like you put him in a deck that's playing across from, or even put him in the deck of bag control Jim that's just going to lock down all the bad stuff tokens. All of a sudden it becomes a lot better because then you're locking down all the tokens. You're grotesque statuing. Like you could go like 3 and 3 on this guy pretty easily without a whole lot of worry. That said, that's a lot of setup. And this specific thing of like how often do I draw bad stuff versus something else, you would think as someone who plays a lot of Mystic, I would be like, okay, it's 60%. Like I would kind of know about what that ratio is. But I feel like you kind of have... I really want to play with this guy to see how risky it actually ends up being, right? Like...
You would imagine,
so worst case scenario, you just burn an action, right?
Which is, I mean, granted, in Rogue, it's not that bad in Rogue usually, but generally, yes, that's one of the worst things you can just burn. But
Jake in the chat says this one triggers my inner click economy.
So
quantify that, bitches.
What would the net gain from this have to be for you to feel like it was worth it? Because you don't get to draw a card and gain a resource. You choose one. The
first time I read it, that's what I read, and I was like, okay, I see this.
So at least 2? Like 2... At 2 tokens, you'd feel good. At 3, you'd feel great, is kind of what I'm feeling from this.
Yeah.
But...
If you hit this guy like 3 times in a game at 2 tokens or more, I feel like that's okay.
That I would consider that really good, personally. Simply because I would imagine that you would flop. After that first token draw, I'd imagine as soon as you go for a second one, you're going to flop more often than not. And that could just be me playing defensively, but...
You know what? I have a Chaos Bag sitting right over here. Let's do a live experiment here. Here we go.
Sure.
Okay.
What scenario are you set up for?
I am in Shattered Aeon, so this is an end game Forgotten Age bag.
Before you do that, this was another point I was going to bring up, is that Henry Wan, to me, feels like a level 0 starting ally that you eventually replace for another ally that might do something better. Because as you go through the campaign, the bag is going to get worse and worse, generally.
We'll find out. All right. And Nick, I'm going to let you make the decision as to when we stop.
Okay.
All right, so first token is an Elder Sign. This is going well.
Okay, do one more.
All right. So it's reveal another, right? So I don't put it back?
You reveal them one at a time.
One at a time.
Until you choose to stop.
So I do... That helps, so you put it back. Okay, that's a good thing. 2 is... Cultist.
So there you go.
There you go. No, okay.
So let's do another one. Let's do a second one just to...
We're going 3 times. Best of 3 here. All right.
Okay.
All right, first draw is... 0. Keep going.
Yes. Always
Second
go
draw.
for 2.
Second draw is Cultist.
That's the thing is you never stop at 1. Like you stopping at 1 would be like, why are you playing this ally? You know what I mean?
Well,
you always have to go for 2. No, there's no.
No. You're right.
I'm not going to get off this hill.
No. That's a hill you can die on. I rescind. I rescind the argument I was about to make because you could just need a resource, and then literally that little tiny click economist in the back of my head was like, well, you could just click for a resource. All right, which is a valid argument. All right, here we go. Number 3, first token, 0.
Okay, second token.
Second token. Cultist.
See? Now again, you're using literally the last bag you're ever going to use, which has more symbols in it than any other part in the campaign.
I think that's a fair assessment that he'll be more effective early campaign than later. Definitely.
And chat is bringing up that he's better in Wendy, and I will agree with that, simply because Wendy has a built-in solution to his biggest problem.
Yep,
so,
I would agree.
But would you rather have him in Wendy at level 0, or would you rather have Leo, or Yaddle, or who's another? LeBranche maybe. I guess that's a little more conditional. But you know what I mean? Like Leo, to me, anytime I look at level 0 rogue allies, I just look at Leo and I'm like, why not?
Yeah, I feel like, you know what I think? I think this guy in a vacuum is generally pretty weak. I think if he gets a few cards in Rogue specifically, you throw this in Mystic, you might be able to play around with some token manipulation. You take this in Gym, you could grotesque statue. I'm not saying you should, but you could.
That's the thing, is that he kicks out your Olive, and
right.
Olive is amazing.
Right.
Anyway, finish your thought.
My point being, if he gets some tools to play around with token manipulation or something like that, then he could get better, but I don't know. So, I'm dubious at the moment.
Is he a Safina ally?
That was my first thought, but the token manipulation tools that Safina has access to are actually ones that I don't think she takes very often, I guess, unless you're going for a very specific build.
Which, we've already learned that the regular, quote-unquote, regular Safina build of big-ass spells works really well. So I don't know if a bag manipulation build of Safina would be probably be viable, but I don't know if it'd be great.
Throw down a couple of protective incantations and then use her rogue tricks to get a bunch of money. Potentially Henry included. I don't know. I am excited to explore this space, but I'm on the side of weak on this guy right now.
I would agree. I would generally agree. But the thing is, he's much like many of the cards that we talk about. He's so situational. It comes down to literally what's your board setup at the time that you have him in your hand. You know what I mean? So much more than Alice Luxley or than Mr. Rook. So
yeah. Interesting. At level 0, some decks sometime will use him. I'll call it. I just don't know what it is right now.
Right.
All right, so that wraps up the cards in the Wages of Sin. Nick, what else we got?
The other article that was posted, this was posted earlier this week, or was it last week? I don't know, I lose track.
Oh yeah, I totally did these out of order, didn't I?
That's fine. This one was an article looking at the Return to Dunwich box, which we haven't heard much about since it was announced. And this talks about chaos in the Clover Club. One of the Return to Dunwich scenarios, and generally the one that we've kind of come to the agreement on, it's generally the one you want to play first. Yes, this is the one that you generally want to play first.
I think it depends on who you are. I personally favor playing it first. Yeah.
But again, we're not going to talk about the well, we know how the scenario runs, so never mind. If we're not going to talk about it because we know.
On the podcast, yeah.
Yeah. But what we are going to discuss, there are 2 encounter cards that are spoiled here that we're actually going to talk about, simply because these are kind of exciting. So, Sean, do you want to read Raise the Stakes?
which might have been one of my most favorite mechanics in the Fight Club card game of all those years ago. For the 6 of you that will get that reference.
When's Fightcast with a K coming out? When are we doing that?
Gross. With a K. Like, yeah, I know.
It would have to be.
I know it would definitely have to be, but still gross.
And then we can have FightCon.
No, stop.
It keeps going. It's a gift that keeps giving.
All right, so Raise the Stakes is a treachery, it turns out. It's in The House Always Wins. It has the illicit trait, Revelation. You must choose one. Remember that you have cheated. Lose 5 resources. Or put Raise the Stakes into play in your threat area. It gains each criminal enemy at your location loses aloof, and if it is Act 2 or 3 where they have already lost aloof, each criminal enemy engaged with you gains +1 fight and +1 evade. So, just off the top of my head, like, I don't think I have ever cheated in The House Always Wins. Like, that's just something, like, even my first time through, I'm like, oh, that seems bad, not doing that.
Right.
So it's funny that it's given, like, those are some pretty big other options when you can just cheat to get out of it. So right. I still don't know if I will, but it's going to make me think about it a little bit harder.
I don't think I would do that last one. Unless I was playing Guardian and it was Act 1. But the lose 5 resources, that's the thing. Like, to me, that's the go-to option, and that's going to be hard to satisfy for some investigators. So, I don't know. Cheated has such a bigger repercussion than you would expect. Like, it, at least in classic Dunwich, you cheating affects more than just this scenario. Like, it adds a token to the bag, which...
It really does.
To me,
it really adds a token to the bag.
I would argue that
no
that's a huge effect.
Mm-hmm.
Ian, how do you feel about Raise the Stakes?
Sneak attack, Ian! Backstab Ian!
I'm sitting here flabbergasted because I've personally have cheated so many times in Dunwich, surprising no one.
Surprising no one. That is on brand.
I get so impatient, like the first time I fail, I'm like, that's a cheat. No, but it really is that it's a big consequence compared to some of the other like stuff that comes back in campaigns. That's like a whole token that's
do you add is it an elder thing or
elder
a tablet?
thing.
I remember the elder things being okay, I remember the elder things being generally worse in Dunwich.
That's what I remember, yeah.
Dunwich seemed to still follow the core box setup where it was like they literally went in order, like Skull was not bad, Cultist was a little worse, and then so on and so forth. Sure. And it wasn't until Carcosa where they really started to be a little bit more variable.
I remember particularly, I think it's Undead Dimension and Unseen, the Elder Thing's the one where it attacks you, I think, if you fail, something like that, like the broods, that is. So, yeah, there's some bad stuff in there. But, yeah. I feel like with this Raise the Stakes card, I'd probably pick losing the resources most of the time.
Right.
Yeah, so just rules question, and I know Scott's not here, but I'm fairly certain you guys will know this. So if I have 3 resources, can I still pick the lose 5 resources because it's changing the game state? Or do you have to completely be able to fulfill completely the thing?
I remember talking to Matt about this with one of the encounter cards from Labyrinths of Lunacy. If you can't completely fulfill an option, then you cannot choose that option.
BD Flory in the chat is saying yes, and he tends to be pretty right with rules.
I could be misremembering, but
I thought the rule was as long as it changes the game state. You can't, like, if you're on 0 resources, you can't choose lose 5 resources. But
then why would you ever not choose, like, you know what I mean? If you have as long as you have 1 resource, you can pick that middle bullet, and you're never going to touch the other 2. You know what I mean? Like, that's...
Well, I mean, for some people, they might want to hold on to their resources. That could be an important thing.
Their resource?
Well, okay, if we're taking that specific example, yes, you would never do anything else.
I don't know. I could very well be wrong, but it feels to me like this card becomes incredibly less threatening if I can just lose one resource.
I think I remember Scott saying that on an episode that you can partially fulfill, and I know that surprised me because in Lord of the Rings it's like you have to pick the option that you fulfill completely. Like if there's one partial, you can't pick that one. But yeah, I don't know. I will get clarification on that one. And
are you really tagging Matt right now?
He's online.
God damn it!
But I do like that the cheating aspect is being woven more into the scenario.
Yes.
'Cause before it was just that aspect was just whether you choose to do it in the gambling room or not.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that was Raise the Stakes, but let's talk about the other encounter card, just because I think this is kind of exciting as well, especially since we're talking about cheating. So now there's Caught Cheating, which is an encounter card, illicit traded. It has Surge, everybody's favorite keyword, and its game text reads, Revelation, each player who has cheated must lose 2 resources and take 1 damage. So, another reason to not cheat, as if we needed that. So, yeah, I mean, there's really not a whole lot to talk about with this one. It's just like, Ian, I'm still surprised that you have said that you've cheated often. Because to me, that's like, nope, not gonna do it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely hasn't been like every scenario, but I when I end up doing it a lot is if I do House Always Wins second, because you just have so little time that it's like you really need to nail those clues right away, unless you're just prepared to fight the big baddies that come storming in. But yeah, this is kind of like the something in the drinks equivalent for cheating. The Surge one that pops up.
Which that's what I expected cheating to have more of an effect like what something in the drinks had. Where it was just, again, it was contained to the scenario. But again, the fact that it adds that token, and this is Return to Dunwich, it could add 2 tokens for all we know. Like,
yeah. I feel like the upshot of this is just going to be that no one's ever going to cheat again.
Right.
So it's just going to make you just stay at that room for longer. And yeah, although we don't know.
Can confirm you can get out of the room without cheating. Have done it many times.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to make you stay there longer, but we also don't know what other rooms there are, because I know they mentioned there's some, like, what is it, a stage or something, so there'll probably be some other ways to get clues, so we'll see.
And moving on from there, let's talk about arguably the most interesting, I would say, card of the 3 spoiled in this article. Ian, do you want to read Naomi O'Banion for us?
Oh, do I? I do. Naomi O'Banion is a ruthless tactician, 5-cost story asset. Oh, lots of pips here. 2 intellect icons and 2 combat icons, so amazing with well prepared. Ally, criminal, and syndicate traded. Boosts both your intellect and your combat. You get +1 intellect, +1 combat. And then a lengthy reaction here. A reaction when an investigator at your location reveals a non-tentacle chaos token during an intellect or combat test. Exhaust Naomi O'Banion. Cancel that chaos token and reveal a new chaos token. For the remainder of this test, if another copy of the canceled chaos token is revealed, cancel it and reveal a new chaos token. So basically, you can pick a token that's just not going to show up for that test, other than the tentacle. And then she has very meaty at 3 health and 3 sanity, and takes up the ally slot, of course. Woo, that is the definition of a bomb ally right there.
So obviously, you run Naomi. You try and get Naomi, assuming you can pull her through multiple scenarios, and you do a charisma build with Henry Wan. Wan?
Yeah.
Ian, you weren't here, but we were having a hard time placing a proper home for Henry, other than maybe like a Wendy build. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those rogue things where the existing rogue allies are so
Yes.
good, and that, like, I would still put Henry above like Joey the Rat and some of the other rogue allies.
Well,
so I think he slides he slides into that mid range, like above kind of the garbage tier of rogue allies, but just below the elite tier. But that's just my initial take. I may end up being horribly wrong
And
later. But
that's essentially where we landed as well.
Yeah, I do think there's some. I don't want to recapitulate your whole conversation, but yeah, I do think there's some potential for some craziness, particularly if someone's using like a bad control build or something, taking out all the bad tokens. So for Naomi, I know when she was first spoiled, that people in the chat, eagle-eyed listeners who actually pay more attention to the encounter icons than I do, pointed out that she has the Where Doom Awaits icon. So I'm wondering if that means she's only going to show up for Where Doom Awaits.
Interesting. Well, okay, so I totally didn't catch that. That is really damn interesting and also kind of disappointing.
Yeah. The image someone posted in our chat of Madame LeBron instead of Madame LeBron.
Oh boy, we missed commenting on that whole side story. Okay.
I'm sorry. It's just so good.
Gonna have to print that one out to use it.
No, Jake, it's worth the interruption.
Jake, can I steal that for our social media? Just because.
I what's most cool to me, other than I really like the art for Naomi, is it's an example of what these return boxes need to do, which is kind of not just make things harder or even just add more stuff, but address some of the, not necessarily issues, but the wishes that people had. Because I know one of the things people mention a lot for Dunwich is they wish, like, O'Banion having your back
meant something.
had more of an impact. Because the only thing it does is and make sure you don't have the monsters and blood in the altar, and
you get some clues.
Does something else.
You get some clues in
for
Where Doom Awaits.
right?
Yeah, you get...
Yeah. But this really ups the stakes, because I assume you're going to get her for having O'Banion having her back and rescuing, what's his face? I can't remember his name right now.
Peter Clover.
Clover. And so I assume it's going to be the same trigger, but that's really... Now I'm actually going to be tempted to try to achieve that, which can be kind of a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
Because you have to fight your way back through, but now it's worth it. Now there's a big carrot on the end of that stick.
Yeah, Peter Clover is one of those... Like, getting him is one of those things that you have to build your deck for and plan for it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think... Have we had an effect like that? That you're like, I need to make sure that I build my deck in such a way that I can get X. Like, I think Peter Clover is the last one that felt like it was such an event, you know what I mean, to get him. So
yeah, not to that degree that I can think of.
And then he ended up just getting it.
I was about to say such an event, and also for such a little like of an effect. Just a little poot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am also really in love with the art on this one, though I do have to say, like, why is there blood dripping from the toe of that boot? Was there a henchman that came along and in earnest was like, hey, this is dissolving too slowly, I'll push it in and make it dissolve faster, and then he pushed it in and it didn't, so then it like shamefully rose up and started dripping because all he could get in was the toe.
I get what you're going for. But you obviously dismember the corpse before you drop it in.
Yeah, but wouldn't the whole foot be covered? Why is it just dripping from the toe?
Well, I'm not like... Scott needs to be here so he can explain how the human body works, because I don't know why there's only blood on the toe, but... All I know is this makes me want to watch Snatch again, because Bricktop's monologue about about how you deal with a dead body is so perfect.
Just a good movie in general.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, anything else from that article? I don't think there's anything new.
No, I think we're good.
Do we're kind of expecting? I know nothing's been officially announced, as far as I know, but we're expecting that we're going to get Return to Dunwich before Circle Undone drops, right?
That's the implication, if only implied by the fans.
Yeah, I guess we don't have an idea right now. If it's by the quantity of articles, then we've gotten more articles for Return to Dunwich than Circle and Done so far.
Have we? I thought we had 2 and 2.
Well, for a single product.
Wait,
we haven't got a second one for Circle and Done, the box. We got it for the 2 follow-ups.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Whereas this is like
But
the first
for
one
the
where it's like,
box,
hey,
we
announce
just
the
had the
box.
initial.
Hey, here's something specific about the box.
I see.
You got to recognize that FFG marketing strategy.
When did Return to Zealot come out? Was that between Carcosa and TFA?
I feel like it was right after TFA.
Okay, never mind then. I was thinking maybe we had a precedent we could look back to.
Yes, Jeremy, it was April 6th. Definitely April 6th.
Well, like, personally, I would prefer that order,
Yes.
the Return to come out first, because when Circle and Done comes out, I'm going to be elbow deep in that, and I'm not going to have much time to go back to Dunwich. But if it hits now, that's a sweet spot. Like, I'm ready to go back to Dunwich.
That's
right
just
now,
it, too, because like a return box is 1 release, so that's 1 month. But it's a full campaign. Like, it's a full 8 scenarios, so you have 1 month to burn through Return to Dunwich.
This ain't no
Circle
trifling
and Done.
matter like the Return to Zealot. This is a fucking commitment.
Ugh.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, now I feel like I'm going to have staggered campaigns, like have Circle and Done campaigns going on while I have Dunwich Return campaigns going on, and it's going to be a thing. All
right, excellent. So, guys, let's move it into our main topic tonight. We're going to talk about our 3 favorite and 3 least favorite scenarios per person. So I don't have any like tricky way to edge into this here. What I think we should do though is instead of trying to be tricky and be like, hey, lead with good news, finish with bad news, or hey, lead with bad news and then finish so it's good. Let's do like the compliment sandwich, where we go back and forth between tops and bottoms.
So we start... Well, shouldn't we start with bottom then, so we end on top?
Only if it's a power bottom.
All my bottoms are power bottoms.
That's the correct answer.
What's going on?
I don't even know, but I like it. Okay.
We're discussing tops and
So
Right.
guys, I'll get the easy one out of the way because we've already talked about it to damn death. And I don't want to make this conversation turn like sour mopey. We're just talking about scenarios that didn't hit for us, not necessarily bad scenarios.
Before you go further,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm just going to interrupt real quick. Can we do it where... Because we have repeated ones here. I'm assuming that we're all talking about this one together.
Yes.
Rather than... Okay, good. Perfect.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Definitely rather than repeating. So I'll knock out the easy here. We're going to go ahead and just say that despite a few playthroughs, Boundary Beyond is just not... I'm not warming to it the way I want to. And there's a few reasons for it that we've discussed at length. But ultimately, I think what it gets down to is even though your measure of success, like if you get 3 pillars off that scenario, you're fine. Like that's an okay run. It's still a frustrating process most of the time, right? Like I feel like the main thing that didn't hit for me on this one is the application of the Explorer keyword.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where you take it on the chin up front, and then you also take it on the chin most of the time when you're digging for a location, because the way that encountered or that Explorer deck works is generally you got to dig for a little bit before you find the right location, which means you're just going to see more treachery. So just again, that's my main complaint about it is just the Explorer did not work for me. But
yeah, and then you take it on the chin on the after part too,
Yes.
because when locations are revealed, they usually have a bad effect too. So basically, it's like a whole horrible sandwich of like each part of the Explorer just hits you at boundary.
Yeah. And not only that, but like the game actively like. So the ultimate goal is to get all 6 ancient locations cleared of clues, but there are cards in the encounter that actively undo ancient locations that you have cleared, and that's in my opinion that's worse than adding a doom to the agenda, because that takes more in true solo. That takes more than 1 round of actions from you. That usually takes a couple rounds because you don't always explore successfully. It's just I'm going to be honest, this wasn't the scenario I thought you were going to lead with. I thought you were going to softball it with a different one. But Boundary Beyond is... I've warmed up to it a little bit, but it still feels unnecessarily punishing.
It's definitely more enjoyable when you know what the implications are. It's very, very unpleasant the first time you play through it.
Well, yeah, and I would argue that the success, like what it does for you in the next scenario, and we've again, you said it at the start. We talked about this at length, but Boundary Beyond and the follow-up scenario are so closely linked to each other mechanically, and so far removed from the rest of the campaign mechanically, that it's really to their detriment. Sadly, so it sucks that all the hard work you do in Boundary Beyond only affects the next scenario, and that's really about it. So
the other thing too about this scenario is the way it ends, like, because we've had other scenarios where it's like get as much as you can, and they have a resign option like Threads and Midnight Mass, and this one doesn't. So what ends up happening is the harder you push, the more you make yourself vulnerable for
a wipe.
The kind of big confrontation you have to do at the end. Whereas if the ending was different, if it was just like a get to this location and resign, then I think that might make me feel better, because then I would be more apt to try to push to get more, knowing that I just have to get to the end and like get out. But otherwise, there's this weird dynamic where the more you push, the more you leave yourself vulnerable to getting knocked out at the end, which isn't. So a lot of people have said the same thing, and we've said the same thing, that you just end up biding your time. Oh, I got one location, I'm just going to sit here and build up for the end. But I actually didn't put this one in my bottom three, surprisingly.
Neither did I.
I think maybe part of it was just like it was too expected, so maybe that's why I did it. And I didn't want to like complain about it again. That probably played a factor in it. But it was also a thing of like, compared to the other three that I picked, at least, I don't know. I guess uninteresting, like I've said before, is a bigger sin for me than just outright ball busting. And Boundary Beyond at least has something going on, even though it's not very fun sometimes.
I agree.
So Ian, what's a quest that hit for you? And I say quest, I mean scenario.
I got you.
Still trying to train that Lord of the Rings out of myself.
One of my top three scenarios is Unspeakable Oath. So the reason I really like this one is it can be difficult, but I find that it was more so, especially when I first played it. And then I think you kind of get down the pattern. But I think the factors that go into it is, one, I just really like the whole Arkham Asylum setting and this idea of having to... I guess it goes deeper than that. I am just a sucker in general for any escape scenarios in an RPG or a game. Like in RPGs, I love when you get captured and all your stuff gets taken away and you have to escape. I loved Escape from Mount Graham in Lord of the Rings, which was a similar thing. You get locked up and you have to escape. So it just speaks to me on that level. So that's why it's there. And I just think it's I also like scenarios where you have to fulfill like a few different tasks, because that really like hits that RPG feeling for me.
And this was the first time that we saw that, right?
Well, Rougarou had it, but...
Yes, okay, yeah, this was the first time that we saw it before, like, quote-unquote, committing to something. You know what I mean? Like, it was just on the front of the act.
Right, yeah, where we didn't know really what was the repercussions going to be. And yeah, it's just an example of, like, a standard Arkham campaign scenario that just, like, does what the game does really well. And so that's why Unspeakable Oath is on top for me. One of the top three.
Unspeakable Oath definitely would have been in my top three if it scaled based on player count better. But because it is so punishing in true solo, and
pretty
because... Brutal. Yeah, like I think this one scales some of the worst out of all the scenarios that we played so far. like, because of that, like, that's the one reason. Because when I first played when my blind run through Carcosa played this, my solo Roland blind run, it took me like 4 attempts, because that was when I decided I'm just going to keep resetting and playing until I get something that lets me continue, because I was too invested. It took me like 4 attempts to actually do it. So, and I was cheating like crazy, because I was changing my deck so much between each attempt too. Like, well, now I'll put Pathfinder in there. Well, now I'll put Shortcut back in there. And it was just, but otherwise, I totally agree with you, Ian. Everything else about the scenario, I love the feeling, I love the tone, I love the theme, and I love how it goes from being just like the quiet, like the eerie quiet of Arkham Asylum, to, oh, there's the beast of Aldebaran down here. Like, what the hell's going on? Like, I love that.
Yeah.
Also, Straitjacket, thematic win. No. Can't do better than Straitjacket in the Asylum scenario.
Yeah.
All right, Nick, hit us with one of your bottoms. Power bottoms.
One of my power bottoms. Let's see here. I'm going to go with... I'm going to do the softball that I thought you were going to softball, Sean. And then you ended up throwing a curveball. I am
I'm all knuckles, baby.
Oh, boy. This scenario...
Knuckleball! It's a knuckleball! That's what the joke was. Okay.
Right,
yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right. We got you.
Go knuckleball deep. Anyway, this scenario is one that I... we all, I think, agreed that this ultimately felt like kind of like the low point of this camp. Well, I thought we all did. Apparently Sean didn't. But the Heart of the Elders, which is, coincidentally, the only scenario that is directly linked to Boundary Beyond as far as how the mechanics work. Heart of the Elders, and we talked at length about this, and I think we really hit the nail on the head in our previous discussion, but everything it's doing was already done by 2 scenarios that came before it, and arguably both of those scenarios did those things better. So Heart of the Elders tries to be 2 mini scenarios that are connected together, that one of them you can repeat, or rather you have to repeat until you get all 6 pillars. But the fact that, again, my Calvin run just spun its tires on the first section of Heart of the Elders, and other than the boss enemy being kind of like a pseudo boss, kind of like like he was a fake boss because you didn't really need to deal with him as long as you could, evade him and move or anything like that. Other than that first part just felt like a watered down version of Untamed Wilds, and then the second part just felt
except for the damn ants.
Oh, and the fucking ants. Yeah, all right. Anyway, the ants can go die. I hate that card. But and the second part of the scenario just felt like Doom of Etsley without, again, the coolest part of Doom of Etsley, which is the map rearranging. So, Heart of the Elders is like trying to do what 2 other things did, but it does them both worse. And it not only that, but it does it right after Boundary Beyond. So, not
Confucius once said that he who chases 2 rabbits catches neither.
Well, there you go. Unfortunately, you have to keep doing it until you can catch the first rabbit. So that's the other tick against Heart of the Elders, is that you got to keep chasing that damn rabbit. And then once you have one, then you can just give up on the third or second. Jeez, losing my metaphors.
It worked.
Yeah, this one was also in my bottom 3, and I was basically deciding between this and Boundary Beyond. For what was going to be in my bottom, and I picked this one again just because that big sin of not being interesting and just being repetitive of what we've seen. I think what we all appreciate about this game is how it's constantly able to provide new experiences with each scenario, and within the framework of clue gathering, all the stuff we usually do, but there's always some new hook to each scenario. And there is a new hook here, which is having 2 scenarios, but unfortunately the actually meat of what you're playing is not new, and it's the first time I've ever played a scenario in this game and been like, I'm kind of just spinning my wheels doing what I've already done in other scenarios, and so that's why it's in the bottom for me. Yeah,
and not only, oh my god, I had a point. Oh yeah, so the way that I chose my bottom 3 is it's essentially what you're saying, where it's a level of interest, but for me it's how interested would I be in playing these standalone? Like, how much do they stand on their own outside of the campaign they exist in to make me want to play them? And Heart of the Elder, like Boundary Beyond, is one that it's challenging, but to me, I see that challenge as something that maybe with a 49 experience deck, that's something that I would want to go back and see if I can accomplish it, how easily I could accomplish it. Whereas with Heart of the Elders, that's one that I'm only ever going to play it when when I'm coming out of Boundary and going into whatever the next one is, City of Archives or whatever. Yeah, so I'm never going to play this standalone.
Agreed.
All right, so moving from there, I'm going to lay one of my favorites on you guys. So, what's funny is actually, as I went through these, and like I wasn't giving deliberate thought to any kind of theme, but a theme definitely formed. The first one I'm going to lay down, though, is Pallid Mask. So the Pallid Mask scenario out of Carcosa I thought was fantastic. It's variable every time you play it. It ramps as you ramp, which I appreciate. Like, the fact that you're getting farther and farther from the entrance scenario or the entrance location, and that's what governs how hard or how harsh the skull token is, and various other effects. Like, you have some agency in how bad the chaos bag is, but you kind of also need to press your luck into it to complete the scenario most of the time. I don't know. I whenever there's a meetup, I always bring this one in standalone. It's a fun little dungeon delve, and I think it's got some really cool things going for it. Chief among them, if we're going to call it like a flavor wind, let's talk about the Shadow Behind You, because that's an amazing card.
Yeah, I love that.
It's probably some of my favorite art from that whole cycle, from that whole campaign. Maybe not my absolute favorite, but it's definitely up. It's one of the ones that I will always be able to picture exactly what that card looks like in my head.
This one is definitely in my hot list for sure, and I considered it for top 3 just because I love the randomly generated quote-unquote dungeon, and I've just had some great games that I guess part of my criteria too is like thinking of scenarios that lead to those really memorable finishes, and I've had quite a few memorable finishes to this one where I'm just like frantically searching for the right exit, and all the enemies are closing in, and you just manage to pull it out at the last minute. So I think there's a lot of little parts that go into that, but I think the fact that the map is always different kind of adds to the appeal.
Oh my god, you guys remember the Corpse Dweller? I'm just running through the cards on this one again to remind myself. Like, the Corpse Dweller causes some really fun moments.
Oh yeah.
You're trying to scry the Catacombs deck? Is that what that was called? Yeah, the Catacombs deck with the Docent? Docent?
The only humanoid in the encounter deck. Yeah.
Aside from the man in the Pallid Mask. But anyway, you're trying to scry the encounter deck, and all of a sudden it's like, blah, 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 and he turns into this Corpse Dweller. I don't know. I love that enemy because thematic implications aside, you also have some cool agency in going like, okay, I don't want to see a Corpse Dweller. We need to take care of these little guys when they pop up.
Yeah.
Anyway, love that scenario.
No, it's a lot of fun. I really love that
they can all turn into agents, so we gotta take it. It's like the Matrix.
I really love the turn. I love the when it really ramps up, and I can't remember the boss enemy's name, but when that hits table, the Spectre, yeah. And I also love the ending and how you can you deal with the man, and you have 2 options essentially. Like, you can choose to try and reason with him, or you can defeat him. And those 2 things combined, because the Spectre, it's a boss enemy that's it's more of a ticking time bomb than it is something that just pops up. Like, the fact that it comes in at the entrance location and then just slowly comes after you is so cool. And then the fact that you have 2 different options for how you want to end the scenario, I think is really cool as well. So yeah, Pallid Mask is a really good one.
Yeah, and one of them is like that parts of the map start falling off, which is really cool. It's really like, I mean, this can be said for other games, but I think one of the cool things about Arkham is that a good Arkham scenario is really telling a story, and I don't mean that literally, like there's a story going on. I mean through the mechanics, like there's a beginning, a middle, and a climax to each scenario, and the really good ones like really are on point with each aspect of it and really build up to that ending. And I think that's where Paladin Mask really hits.
Ian, as we delve, why don't you give us one of your bottoms?
One of my power bottoms. Okay. Well, one of my bottoms is this one is gonna be not from TFA. So this is one that's not a bad scenario in terms of like in the same way that Heart of the Elders is, but it's just one that for some reason is just always a bit blah to me for the most part. Unless I play like 4-player games, is a little bit more interesting, and that's Echoes of the Past. I think because I mostly play solo, and in solo the scenario is often just like it's either over super quick, like I've gotten through with maybe one enemy spawning, and you just go through like in 20 minutes or something and you're done. And then I've had the reverse games where it's just like enemy after enemy after enemy, and you just are not able to get anything done. So I don't think it's badly designed or anything like that. It's just in what's my favorite cycle so far, Carcosa, this is kind of the low point for me, just because it doesn't quite hit the interest that the other scenarios do.
Yeah, Echoes of the Past is an interesting one, because I do play primarily true solo, and I think that's why I didn't even think about it, because every time I played in true solo, I'm done before the first agenda even pops, because It's so easy. But what does make it stand out to me is that I really like to me, this, I can picture this as two different things. I can picture this as a level in a video game, and I can also picture this really easily as a scene in a movie. And I just love this whole, like, you're going into this this library, this historical society, late at night. There's no one else here, or is there? Like, I just, the theme is really cool. I love
there.
Or is there? I love the map setup. I love how you can play with the passageways and stuff like that. So this one didn't hit my bottom 3, and I'm actually surprised to see it on your bottom 3. But I will agree that this is the low point of the Carcosa campaign, simply because the rest of the campaign is just stellar.
Right.
Well, and I think your solo bias definitely shows there as well, because I've played this one solo, and it just has a different pace. Having that
there's no pace.
Well, yeah. Having that cultist hit the board from setup in 2-player on changes the tenor of the scenario, I think. So yeah, I can definitely see it. But all that said, I would also concede that it is one of the easiest scenarios in the game, even at 4-player. So
yeah,
if you're in the driver's seat the whole time, it definitely can be a little boring. All right, so moving on from there, Nick, give us a top.
All right. So, Sean, you said that Paladin Mask is a great little dungeon delve. And I totally agree, because it is. But I'm going to... you already know which one I'm talking about. I'm going to posit what I consider to be a better dungeon delve.
And I would agree.
And that is the Depths of Yoth. Now, what makes the depths of Yoth, the Yeps of Doth, so good is that...
Okay, hang on. Before we get there, we haven't technically spoilered this scenario on the podcast yet, have we? So, careful. Spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't played it yet. We're going to talk mechanically about Depths of Yoth.
Well, I'll keep it brief, and I won't talk about too much. All I'm going to say, what I was going to talk about is this takes the idea that TFA has been positing to us about repeating scenarios. But this is the one that does it the best, because it's not you failed, do it again. It's you did it, you made some progress.
Now
you're
let's
not
go
done
deeper,
yet,
baby.
Exactly. And not only that, but again, I'm grading these based on not only how do they feel in the campaign, but even more so outside of their home. How much do I want to play these standalone? And immediately after I finished the Yeps of Doth, I was like,
God damn.
I want.
I'm not going to be able to unhear that now.
I want. My favorite thing is when I type that and then it's just silent, and then like you just say, I can't tell if that was a mistake or not. Anyway, I knew immediately that this was a scenario that I wanted to be like at Arkham Knights or at Gen Con. Just we have like an event where it's like, okay, see how far you can get. See how many levels you can go down. Just, you're not going to end the scenario. You're just going to go until you give up or until your all investigators are dead. Yes, exactly.
In Soviet Russia.
So it's like, it takes that, because I'm very much on the gameable side of Arkham. Like, I like the narrative and I think it's really compelling, but what I think is the most engaging part of Arkham Horror is not the narrative, it's the gameable mechanics. And this takes that idea of repetition to mastery, and this is it. Like right here, this is the scenario that does it the best, I would say. Yeah, it's just so good.
Yeah. And what's funny is, like, as I was talking, like, I have a theme with my tops. I tend to really enjoy the dungeon delves, it turns out. But this one, I think, is at the top of that particular category, because it is so interesting in that it's like, all right, push through. All right, we got it. All right. It lets back a little bit. Like, as you go deeper, the skulls get worse. Like, certain things happen when you're at a deeper level. You got the pursuit mechanic, which is pretty cool. So even if you're trying to put off enemies, they still are a factor. But it has a really cool ebb and flow to it. And I 100% agree that this, I think, needs to be an achievement at the very least during our Iron Man. Like, how deep do you go?
Yes.
Or probably...
This one was definitely... this was on my bubble, like that. I almost picked it for my top 3 because I really enjoy it as well for all the reasons you guys are saying. I think it ties into the key campaign mechanics like Vengeance and really pays it off in a big way. And again, I'm kind of a sucker for what I'm a sucker for, and one of the things I'm a sucker for is the Mines of Moria scene in Lord of the Rings.
Yes, buddy.
And this gives me such strong Moria and Balrog vibes throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that makes me love it so much.
100%
agree. Yeah. Yeah. So that's why I'm all about Depths of Yoth and really pulls that off.
We cannot get out.
And one of the
snakes have barred the gates. We cannot get out.
I'm waiting.
They are coming.
I knew it. Okay, anyway. So
your best tactic is to play into it.
So one of the things that you highlighted, Sean, on Pallid Mask as being a really strong point in it, and I totally agree, is the pacing of that scenario and how, and Ian, you said how it tells a story in the mechanics. Like, it has, Pallid Mask has a very strong beginning, middle, and end. Depths of Yoth still has a really strong pacing to it. It's just, it takes what Pallid Mask did and it speeds it up. Like, it condenses it down and then forces you to repeat it, so that even though you're going like from opening, rising tension, climax, like you have that and it's condensed, but then you have to do it again, and each time that opening point starts a little worse and a little worse, and the rising tension rises a little faster and a little faster. It's just, it is a beautiful machine.
And it's also the explore mechanic done right.
Oh yes,
Finally.
yes.
that bears mentioning.
As much as we
Hallelujah.
As much as we bagged on explore throughout the campaign, and I'm sure we'll talk about this when we do the full depths, so I won't go full into it now, but just, it does it right. It does what you want explore to do, which is give the unpredictability of you don't know where you're going, and sometimes you're like frantically trying to find the right location without the feel bad stuff.
It's what I wanted explore to be.
Yes.
And there are still times where I'm okay with Explorer as it is, but this is like, I can't remember when we were talking about it in our, just amongst ourselves, but we were talking about, hey, you know, what are the best Forgotten Age scenarios? And I think unanimously almost it came out Threads of Fate, Depths of Yoth. And it's like, oh, so the two scenarios that either don't have Explorer or modify how Explorer works.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so I think from here we go to one of my bottoms?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm keeping track. Okay, so let's go with the more predictable one that I'm sure Nick saw coming. And I don't want to talk about this one too long because I really only have the one problem with it. But Where Doom Awaits, still, I have warmed to it, and I knowing what it holds for you going into it counts for a lot, rather than just stumbling into it in your blind play and going, oh, I needed to do this. Oh, because I can't do this, I'm done now. Oh, well, that's unfortunate. But still, even knowing, it's not a scenario I really look forward to in Dunwich. There's a fun flow. I really love Blood on the Altar. Like, there's some fun to be had in Undimensioned and Unseen, kind of bobbing and weaving with the enemies. Where Doom Awaits, you're working your way up the hill, and the locations get trickier and trickier as you go through, but I don't know, it never really hits anything for me that resonates as like, yeah, I'll go, like you said, Nick. I think that's actually a really good measure of, if someone said, hey, I've got Where Doom Awaits standalone, you want to play it? My instinct at this point would be, well, what else you got?
I'll go punch myself in the balls a few times.
That's not to say, when I play Dunwich, I dread it or it ruins the campaign for me, but it's still just one that never really, I look forward to, I don't think.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, Where Doom Awaits was tied with one of my other ones, and I put the other one on my bottom three simply because you had Where Doom Awaits already on yours. You're right. It doesn't... Its identity is that it's a gauntlet. And it's a gauntlet that isn't... Now, I know this is going to sound weird, but it isn't a fair gauntlet?
Well,
question
weird.
Mark? Right. Because, okay, of course, the purpose of a gauntlet is to be challenging, but this one is it's artificially challenging because it's a sudden 180-degree turn on the core strategy of the game that we haven't seen yet. And it's the whole fact that it requires raw intellect in order to progress. And then, I don't know, it's just, you're so right that there's just, its strengths are not super huge, they're not great. The theming is really good in it, and you really get a sense, you're, with, no pun intended, it's an uphill battle. You know what I mean? It really feels like that. But even with that, there's still just, the negatives are just too strong on it. They're too prevalent, and you can't get around them other than planning for them from the start. Mm-hmm. And that's a big downside.
Yeah.
I am kind of torn on this one. I think it falls somewhere in the middle for me. There's things about it that I don't like so much, which are the things you guys mentioned, the kind of intellect, investigate bottleneck, especially the fact that its limit once per turn is probably my number one gripe. But there's other aspects of it that I like, and it's hard for me to separate, because I was kind of thinking about this when I was making this list. It's hard for me to separate how much of my positive feelings are about this is because it was the first penultimate scenario that ended your campaign if you lost. It's weird for me to say that's what makes it positive for me, but the reason it does is because I have a few campaigns I ran through where I have fond memories of the scenario because they came down to literally the last turn, one doom away from losing, and I pulled off the win. And so those kind of wins kind of weigh this scenario psychologically in my mind more on the positive end because of those. And I think there are some cool things like the Servant of the Key that goes up the hill and adds doom if you don't stop them in time. So I think there's some cool things. I think it does reflect kind of the roughness of that it was the first campaign, before the game was even mature.
So I just saw what time it is in our recording. So let's each of you are going to pick one more that you'd like to talk about. You get to decide whether it's a top or a power bottom. So Ian, what scenario would you like to talk about?
Oh,
that we haven't talked about yet.
You're making us pick.
I know. I'm gonna be that guy.
I think I'm gonna lean positive.
Good call.
Give one of my tops because I don't want to complain anymore. And between my two tops that are left, I've talked at length about Threads of Fate, so I will talk about Carnivale of Horrors, which I've mentioned it quite a few times, I think, on this podcast as being like a top scenario for me, and it's still there after all this time. Again, it meets that Nick criteria of like, what do you bring and want to play with people randomly? Like, I would always have Carnivale ready and have in the past. And again, same things that I've talked about, that kind of telling a story through the mechanics. This is like a prime contender. And the first time I got to that ending part of it, and I mean, we can spoil Carnival by now, can't we?
It was the first year of release.
Fair game.
By the time we get to it, and all of a sudden it's like, take the map off the board and you're just in a freaking boat and rowing away. Like, it just blew my mind. And the circular map is still unique. We haven't had anything like that again. And the ways that different enemies and like trying to find the right masked revelers, I think that's what they're called. It's very Assassin's Creed feel. So it just hits a lot of buttons for me.
Man, you're right, Ian. And like the whole thing has that, especially if like your Assassin's Creed experience was mostly in the Assassin's Creed 2 Ezio era. Like,
is it?
Well, it was definitely the apex of the series. Although I have my eye on Odyssey pretty hard.
Odyssey's good,
but the Baleful Reveler here looks basically like a Templar. He's got like the prim and proper jacket on. He's got a tricorn hat with a little bit of adornment. Like, yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Just gotta find those bales of hay.
Nice. Nick, hit us up with your last one.
So, Sean, are you planning to go positive or negative?
I already went, so you go.
Oh, you did? Okay, then I'll end positive. Simply because my two negatives aren't as interesting to talk about.
Sure.
So I'm going to talk about my overall, I still consider this one my favorite scenario, I think. Even though there are things like Threads of Fate was really close to making this list, and the only reason why it didn't is, again, simply because while it's really cool to play Threads of Fate standalone, that one relies a lot on the decisions you've made even in just the first two scenarios and the two interludes before that. So I kind of put Threads of Fate more as it fits better in the campaign, and thus I'm not going to be replaying it as often on its own. Whereas Curse of the Rougarou, if we're talking old scenarios, this was literally the first scenario we got that right after the core box. And I'm sure...
it's older than the Miskatonic Museum, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's older than Dunwich.
Older than all of Dunwich. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
That's what I was going for there, but failed.
Okay. Curse of the Rougarou is... And a lot of this could just be rose-colored glasses and the feeling that I got the first time I played it. Because, again, Arkham was so new at that time. There was so much that we didn't know about what this game could do. But the fact that Curse of the Rougarou has the variable map is always fun. It takes the idea of a boss enemy and it turns it into a hunt. Like, this isn't an enemy that's chasing you down and you have to deal with. The point of this scenario, and I didn't expect this, but the point of this scenario is to capture it or to chase it down and take care of it. That is that's so cool. Like, that we have an Arkham scenario where you are the active party. I love that. And then on top of that, and this is what I always go back to, and this is what really blew my mind open as to the design capabilities of Arkham Horror the card game, is when you engage the Rougarou and you flip that act over. Or no, I'm sorry. When you get to a location and the location says action, test agility 7. If you succeed, remember that you have found a strange doll. And that was the first time we had ever seen anything that said, remember you have done this. Right. It just, oh my God, I cannot, I felt like I was through the looking glass and I was like, this game can do literally anything. I don't feel that way anymore. Arkham has its limitations, but I do think that it is like the narrative potential and the mechanical potential in Arkham. I still don't think we've entirely tapped that. I think that well is very deep. And I think that going from the core box to Rougarou is like a microcosm. It's a small example of of how much this game can change from one scenario to the next, and how interesting and how variable we can make these scenarios. And I Rougarou is still, to me, it's the epitome of that. It's the epitome of that epiphany. Does that make sense? It's the best example.
It sounds like a System of a Down song.
Yeah, epitome of epiphany. Write that down in my band. I'm very surprised that, as you were talking about it, Nick, I'm surprised it's held up this well so long. That I would expect a scenario that old to have more wrinkles, and it really doesn't. Mm-hmm. It's a really well put together scenario. And yeah, I had the same experience of like that first time saying, remember this, that you're doing these things and having these story assets. I'm really on a Lord of the Rings kick tonight, no surprise. But one of the things I love in Lord of the Rings, the card game, is when objectives, like good objectives on your side, are brought into play. Yep. And that was the first time. I mean, of course, we had Lita and the core and whatnot, but this Rougarou was the first time we're really like playing with that element of like stuff in the encounter deck or in the scenario cards are not just bad. Like they're going to be stuff that you can earn along the way and like helps you do stuff. Like I still love Arkham scenarios that do that. So.
Honestly, I feel like that's one place where I want Arkham scenarios to just do more of that. Like, give us more tools to address the specific problems of this scenario, but give them to us in this scenario, right? Like,
I think that's a territory that's pretty well reserved for standalones and less for campaigns. And for whatever reason, like probably just because standalones present such a a standalone challenge, like it's such an isolated challenge. You know what I mean? That they can probably afford to be a bit more as we've seen, more punishing with standalone scenarios, and then still devote 1 or 2 card space in the pack to give you something that might assist with it. We've seen it with the Ankh in Eternal Slumber and Night of the Usurper, and we've seen
Team Rocket.
Yeah, and Team Rocket, yeah, Jesse and James. It's not James, though,
no,
is it?
It's definitely not.
It's Jesse and Jake? No, it's... What is it? It's not on Arkham DB either.
It's...
Yeah, I don't remember offhand.
Team Rocket. Yeah,
God, I'd have to go look. It's definitely not James. That's all I know. It's Jesse and something.
It's Damon. Come
God
on,
damn it!
Jake.
I'll just go look. Hang on. Carry on.
But I know that we're closing up our talk about our top 3 and bottom 3, but I do want to talk about Eternal Slumber real quick, because that one was so good. Because I talk about scenarios that feel like you're playing a movie, and Eternal Slumber, despite the fact that it was part 1 of 2, like, to me it stood on its own so strongly because of that whole, you're in Cairo, you're dealing with this weird stuff that's going on and these secrets, and now you're out in the desert, and you gotta find the heart, you gotta go out in the ruins, and then, oh no, the shit's going down in Cairo again, we gotta get back! Like, it was so, like, the pacing of that scenario, and again,
John.
the ramping of tension.
John.
Jesse and John.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So we weren't that far off.
Yeah.
No.
James is a reasonable guess.
I think Team Rocket is the better name.
By far.
I was surprised to see Eternal Slumber on Sean's top list, because your
Right?
initial impressions of that scenario were not kind at all.
He still talks about it.
Okay, so this one was... This one came with a caveat. I'm still not a fan of the arbitrary this scales for multiplayer token. But
Sure.
divorcing that single mechanic, I love that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we go there.
Sure.
I think I just haven't played it enough. It hasn't wrapped its hooks into me yet. I don't dislike it, and there are things I like about it, but it just hasn't hooked me yet for whatever reason.
This one stood with me more than the Knight's Usurper. The Knight's Usurper has a killer ending. Absolutely killer.
Yep.
But the journey...
Sometimes literally.
Yeah, but the journey of Eternal Slumber, like the actual full scenario, I think was stronger than the full scenario of Knight's Usurper. So...
That makes sense.
Can we talk real briefly about Devour Below? No, I said I didn't want to end on a negative note. Never mind.
It's your mistake for leaving it for last, I guess, then. All right, so when we post the episode, we'd love to hear what you guys think are your top 3 and bottom 3. If you feel we're off the mark or are missing something, definitely let us know. So go out and comment on either come talk to us in the Discord, comment on the Facebook post, or by all means, leave us a message on the Mythos Busters hotline. That's 203-493-6984. And guys, to wrap up this discussion, well, rather not to wrap up the discussion. We've wrapped it up. Let's move to tentacle time.
You. I tried to say yeah, but I said you. I don't know why. Anyway.
It worked.
You.
Ian, what you been playing?
Oh, okay. I still feel like I have a big backlog for Tentacle Time, but the things I'll bring up this time are Heroes of Terranoth. Is a game that I got most recently. This is the reskin of Warhammer Quest Adventure card game, which no longer exists because FFG lost the Warhammer license. RIP all their Warhammer games. I'll pour one out for Conquest for Scott since he's not here. But anyway, Heroes of Terranoth, if you like Warhammer Quest card game, then no surprise you'll like this one. If you don't and you want to know what it's like, I find it really fills a place in my collection because there's no deck construction. You're not constructing a deck like you would for an LCG. You literally just have 4 action cards for your character, and then you have equipment that you get along the way. And so there's not a ton of like prep. There's actually 0 prep work for the game. You put it on the table and play it, but it gives you that fun like dungeon delving experience in card game form. Because again, no surprise, I'm way more of a card gamer than like board games with minis and all that. I like my games in card form more than anything else. And so it gives me that kind of like dungeon delve, descent, etc. experience, but in a card game. And it's super simple. You can teach it to someone in like 10 minutes maybe. It's super quick. Super easy to learn. But I find there's like a good deal of strategy in it. There's a lot of strategy in like because basically you have 4 actions. Each time you use it, you exhaust it. And there's only one action that when it exhausts, it readies all of your actions. So you basically have to pick the right order depending on the enemies coming out, and you're interacting with other players. There's ways that you can ready other players' actions or give them more success tokens that are like automatic success when they roll a dice, that kind of thing. So anyway, if you're looking for something like that in your collection, then I highly recommend that one. And I think that one will probably get expansions as long as people buy the core, and they don't have to worry about losing that license this time because they own it.
So now, having played the Warhammer version, are the mechanics basically a straight port, or are there significant changes?
I wouldn't say significant, but there are some subtle changes that I like. Well, I guess the biggest change is the Warhammer Quest card game had it like a campaign where you would level up. This one does not. Like, you can play scenarios one after the other that are kind of continuing a story, but you actually level up within each scenario. So like there's kind of a threat mechanic in the game. Each turn you raise up this peril meter, and then when it hits certain landmarks, then it does some bad stuff. But now, instead of just doing bad stuff, it also will say like pick one of your action cards and upgrade it to one of the advanced ones. And then they changed it so that you basically choose like one of 2 classes. So say you're like a healer, then you can choose whether you're going to level up into, oh god, I can't remember the different classes now, like because they're like based on Terranoth weird stuff.
So it's not like cleric and wizard. It's
right. Is Terranoth like the Shasta of fantasy brands?
The Walmart pop.
So. Like, I hate to bring it there, but is that the case?
Yeah, pretty much.
We still love you, Adam and Brady.
Yeah. So you're pretty much just picking that. So I guess overall, so the big changes are no campaign mode. It's kind of an internal campaign mode in each scenario. And they've also added more customization, like multiple choices per like role. Like, so if you're a warrior, there's 3 different guys you can pick, and they have different abilities. And then you have the choice of customizing into 2 different classes for each. So, and then there's just smaller like quality of life stuff, like how you assemble the encounter decks. I don't know what they're called, but I'll call them encounter decks. So
encounter deck seems like a good bet.
It's a safe, yeah.
Overall, I think it's a better product than Warhammer Quest, even though I like Warhammer World better than Terranoth.
See, I'm indifferent to both. I
was just gonna say,
I enjoy the mechanics, and I know the Saddlers generally do good work, so I'm gonna go grab that next time I get a chance.
Yeah, it's also like because I've heard people ask about like the story aspects. It's also just not a game that's very focused on story. Like there's story there. There's like a paragraph on each quest card, but that's not why you're getting the game like you would Lord of the Rings and Arkham. You're getting it because of the solid mechanics.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. Nick, how about you?
Oh my god. So, like, 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, it's so weird for me to think back, like, not that long ago, and how I, like, pretty much once you moved out of Brainerd, role-playing just stopped being a thing for me, because I couldn't get a group together regularly, and I love the rest of our gaming group, but they're flaky as hell.
That is fair to say.
Yeah. So once Sean and I, who were like the constants in our game group, weren't able to meet every week, then it seemed like everyone else just kind of fell by the wayside, and I wasn't getting any RP, and it sucked, because I am a tabletop role-playing game person at heart. Like that's my core. And it's weird to think that was a time in my life, because now in the last I would say the last year and a half, I've had so much RP. I mean, it started with me just going, I'm gonna run a Savage Worlds game set in the Wars setting, and if you guys want to play, great. And people wanted to play, so we did that, and that lasted a year. And then after the summer after that ended, then I started a Lord of the Rings Savage Worlds game, which is still going despite a couple of scheduling issues, but still going. And very excited for that. Our last session was probably my favorite session so far. It's only the third one. There was no combat, but it was it was so just full of great story moments and great character moments. It was
lots
a lot of
pub
fun.
Crawling.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
And not only that, but just this week I opened up the Facebook group for our players in the Mirus West Marches campaign. So Mirus is the name of the world, and it's our D&D 5th edition West Marches campaign. And this, I've talked about this on previous episodes. I'm not going to get into the details of what a West Marches game is, but it's like this world that I've been building with these other DMs for the last 5 months is now on the cusp of actually becoming a real thing. And I am just beside myself with excitement about it. We have 30 players right now and growing. We have more, like they're getting bigger. No, I'm kidding. We have more players coming. I've told people, like especially local people, I'm like, if you know people who want to play, invite them to the group. We have some characters that are already made. Justin, a person who I've role-played with a lot, who is in my Lord of the Rings game right now, has already tried to schedule the first game, so that's underway. Like
Justin's a go-getter.
He is, yeah. he is an all-star when it comes to tabletop role-playing. Like he plays well, and I am certain that he runs well as well. I haven't actually played in the game where he's been mastering it, but anyway.
I would suspect that it will go well.
Yeah, but Ian, I mean, all the hosts of Mythos Busters are in the player pool for sure, and there's a number of listeners that are as well. Ian already has his character made.
Oh my god, I haven't even begun to think about it.
Yeah, so I'm super excited for this to get going, because this world is vast and it's layered and it has such an interesting history, and I'm just excited for players to start unraveling that.
Ian, what character did you make? Can my character be your lover? Perhaps your power bottom.
I am playing a tiefling monk. I've really wanted to play. Yeah, I've really wanted to play a monk for a while, and I was like, okay, here's my chance, and wanted to throw a tiefling in there because it's not necessarily a usual monk class. I've gotten really excited for this campaign, Nick, because I am relatively novice RPG player. Just haven't had the opportunity to play it a lot over the years. But the times I've had, it's like some of the best game experiences ever is playing D&D for me. So I'm excited to get back into that because it's been a while. It's been like a year and a half, I think, since I played.
Yeah, and
something like that. Yeah.
And of the 10 potential players for my Lord of the Rings game, you were the one. You were the one player that had scheduling conflicts with our Tuesday night. So I felt so bad. Like, I hated that because I know you're bigger into Lord of the Rings than I am. At least you know it more recently than I do. I haven't read Lord of the Rings in forever. But anyway, so the fact that now you're in this and you're excited for it, that makes me excited.
Yeah, and this, just the whole idea of how this thing is running, that it's so different than a usual campaign, that it gives you that kind of open world, like MMO feel in tabletop form.
Yep. When I was pitching this idea to the other DMs, when I said, because I kind of laid the ground rules for like, this is what I want the world to be like. Like, you guys, we can come up with all these different ideas, but this is what I want at the core. I said, I want the game to feel like a tabletop MMO. And I want it to borrow some narrative and also elements of challenge that is indicative of the Dark Souls series. So I'm not gonna. Well, just in the fact that the world isn't built to be fair, it's built to be internally consistent. So, you know, like, and the best example of that is the very first game that I played when I did a marathon with 2 of my regular gaming friends. The second encounter, they had a TPK. The very second encounter. And it was because they weren't managing their resources. And they learned that. You know what I mean? Like, they learned from their failure, and they failed again later, but, you know, they learned from that and they got better, and that made their successes that much more important. So I'm really excited for this to open up.
So roll up your backup character.
Seriously?
I'm just going to be lazy and like have my monk come from a monastery that just pumps out replacements whenever one goes missing.
So Scott, I'm just going to finish this with just this brief anecdote here, but Scott was talking to me about his character, and you guys, Sean, you playing in the Lord of the Rings game, know the kind of character that Scott likes to play.
Oh, I bought him his first beer.
Yeah. So he was like, he was describing it to me. He's like, I like to play bad characters. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I really want you to understand the type of game that we're playing. And I said it to him. I'm like, I'm okay with you doing this. I'm like, but know that I'm not scheduling games. Other players are. And if they know that your character is not necessarily suboptimal, but straight up bad, they might not want you in the group and you might not be able to play. And I had to make sure, and I just ended with, you know what? If he dies, and you make a new character, who cares? Like, that's fine. Just go. Play whatever you want. So, but that's kind of my attitude, is that, like, Miras will remove the chaff. The strong will survive. So we'll see how it goes.
So, I've got a nerdy confession to make. I've never actually played, for all of the tabletop role-playing that I've done in my adult life, I've never actually played legit D&D. It's always been other role-playing systems. Mostly because Nick is always my GM, and I think this has to be like the first time that you've ever actually DM'd as opposed to GM'd.
Yes, I've played D&D in the past for a couple of one-offs, but I've never run it. And I'm just going to tell you that 5th edition is an amazing system for you to come into D&D on.
Well, so I'll look forward to that then.
Yeah. It's what I'm most familiar. It's like the only role-playing that I have played, other than I'm running One Ring over a forum at Call of Cthulhu. But yeah, so 5th edition was I'm most familiar with, so I was also excited that it was 5th ed, because I know that one.
Can I play a bard who buffs characters by singing songs of their past exploits? Would I get like an in-game bonus for actually coming up with lyrics? Because I'm really into that. D&D 5th edition has a couple of different mechanics in it, similar but not the same as Savage Worlds Bennies, where they're like
a mechanical currency that I can grant players for different things. So I would definitely reward you for creatively coming up with lyrics for some of the other PCs.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Because you get certain like inspiration powers as Bard, which you can be lame and just say, "Oh, I'm giving inspiration to this person," or you can actually sing it.
Cool. I'm gonna make David Bowie in like 1983 in D&D. Like that's my target. Like if I hit that, like a little eccentric, a little odd, but still really lovable. Yeah.
So you'll be our second Bard. Our first one is Josh's character, who
sexually charged.
Josh's character is a bagpipes Bard. So
yes,
you guys can start a band.
Oh God, if you guys are in the same party.
I'm trying to imagine Under Pressure played on bagpipes now. I want that edition of that song. All right. So for my part, I think the only thing I'm going to mention real quick here, again, just to reiterate the point, I'll make this quick. Keyforge, I knew I was going to like it based on my demo at Gen Con. I've ended up liking it even more than I expected. I'm currently 9 decks in.
Wow.
Ooh.
Which I bought 6 to begin with. I played a bunch of games among those decks. And like after a certain point, I kind of knew like, okay, these decks, I think, in my micro meta of 6 decks, these are my more powerful ones. So then I played those ones against each other. So I'm like, all right, I need to add some new blood. So I just bought some new decks last night. And it's kind of crazy how just like 3 new decks, all of a sudden, a lot of the things that I thought I knew about the game are actually different because I just haven't seen these particular combos or cards. And I don't know, man. This game it's got far more potential than I expected it to, and it's really fun. And I really, really hope they don't fix the naming, quote unquote, fix the naming algorithm, because I would
ruin it.
Definitely categorize that as a feature and not a bug. What was the best one I got in my new setup? I don't think there was anything great. I think my best one was Lyricist Branwyn Vera Flyer. It's not even Flayer, it's Flyer. Vera Flyer. It's a cool little... that's the one that has Neutron Shark in it, which is an amazing...
Neutron Shark.
Goddamn
Neutron Shark.
I realized halfway into saying it that's where we were going.
I love when you shared the image and you're just like, look at this amazing card. And I'm like, that's the only thing that came into my head. I'm like, just do that. Just do the song. Just do the song.
I saw you typing for a little bit. I'm like, oh, hey, Nick might actually... He must be getting into Keyforge now and have some poignant comment about how ridiculous this card is. Neutron Shark. Like, oh, I don't know what I expected. Anyway, so if you haven't tried it out yet and can find a couple decks... Recommended. Like I said, I've been just co-opting my Arkham tokens to stand in. You don't need to find a core set. Just get a couple decks, get the online rule book, figure out your tokens, and you can just play. I don't own a core, and I've played many, many games of Keyforge at this point. So, again, just highly recommended. It's one of the most accessible competitive games, card games that I've ever played. And guys, I've played a fuck ton. I've played so many card games. And it's got some really cool mechanics that I just think there's ground that's being tread here that has not yet been tread somehow.
Yeah, it's super accessible, but there's stuff there. It's not like empty accessible, There's stuff to sink your teeth into in terms of strategy. I was holding out and saying I'm not going to buy into Keyforge.
It was cute.
I do
have
have now
cute.
forged some keys. I'm only 2 decks in, though, but I did just order the starter set today because it came back in stock. So I have a couple more decks to putt around with and some more tokens. But it's a game that I don't mind having in my collection at all, for sure.
Yeah, that's the thing is like I could stop here at 9 decks and like this is a game I could just break out. Oh well, I won't. I could, but I won't. I can stop whenever I want, Nick.
I'm the one Mythos Buster who doesn't have any Keyforge yet, and it's straight up just because of apathy. It's not because of me going, I'm not going to get into this. It's just me like, well, when I see some, I'll buy some, and I just haven't gone to any place that sells them yet.
I checked the GameStop or the game store in Brainerd when I was there for Thanksgiving. They did not have Keyforge. Can confirm.
Oh, well, fine.
I thought I was walking into a Magic tournament, but in fact there were like 3 separate tables of role playing going on, so I was pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's better than
yes,
Magic.
yes, it is.
Way better. And I like Magic.
I saw one deck today that was Fonzie something. It was like the something of joy.
Hey!
Good old Fonz. Fonzarelli.
All right. Well, I think then that will wrap it up for episode 49 of Mythos Busters. As we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, you have until December 16th to get out there and give us a deck name to get into that drawing for the Invocation Kit for 2018. As always, if you have any questions, comments, bitches, or gripes, call us at 203-493-6984 or 203-493-MYTH if you prefer. Oh boy, what else we got? We got AV Club. That's going to be out there pretty soon. We're also still set on finishing that. We've got like 10 episodes to do in the next month. What else am I missing here, guys? Ian, you doing Abandoned and Alone anytime soon?
Should be soon. This past week and upcoming week are brutal for me. I'm surprised I got through this because I'm freaking beat. But after that, I should be resuming with Abandoned and Alone.
Guys, anything else before we wrap this up?
Negative.
Excellent. Everyone, thank you for joining us for episode 49 of Mythos Busters. Last reminder, if you are, like I would be as a listener, with the intent to hop on our Patreon and have not yet done it, I would urge you, aside from the contest that we just ran, I would urge you to go out and do so before our next episode, because we're planning something kind of special for our next episode that has a lot to do with our patrons and is going to kind of be etched in Mythos Busters history. So again, I don't really have any prizes to offer anyone at this point, but if you're on the fence and we're going to do it anyway, now's a great time to hop in. So I'll just throw that out there for episode 50. Guys, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Mythos Busters.
Neutron shark.
God damn it. Oh, I just got it out of my head.